There we go. Hi, welcome everyone. This is Tarot Unicorns and Coffee, the story of Lemuria and Lemuria Crystals event. We're going to get right into the presentation here. Going to be minimizing you all's faces so I can see my screen. Perfect. Can everyone see that? Yay. Okay. So during today's event, what we will cover is the story of Lemuria, which I'm so excited to tell y'all. And then we'll also talk about identifying Lemurian crystals and the crystal characteristics that enhance their powers, and how you can use these crystals to support your spiritual journey. So who were the Lemurians? Y'all settle in because this is story time, and I love this. I love this part. Okay. So once upon a time, in a non-time, before time, when all that is was one, at some point, all that is decided to send pieces of itself out into the void, pieces of energy. Those pieces became all that we now know, all that is. Now, some of those energy pieces turned into stars and planets. Some of those energy pieces turned into the terrain, the plants and the animals on those planets. All of this was still a living part of all that is, but just now in a different form. Now, still some of that energy became beings, sentient, aware beings, and they spread out to the furthest reaches of this newly formed universe. Some, or I should say universes. Some went to Arcturian, some to Sirius, hello, and some to our own star system. Now, these beings had what we call astral bodies, different from the flesh and bones that we are now. They were what we call light beings, not quite having form. These light beings, one moment. These light beings were exploring all of the new galaxies. Now, the ones that came to Earth wanted to learn all about this planet. These beings had the ability to project themselves into the objects that they wished to explore. Now, when they did this, when they shifted from their astral energetic being into the objects that they wished to explore, they became dense, like the objects. Now, some projected themselves into the plant life or even still into the animals of the time. Now, there was a problem with all of this projecting as a way of exploring. Think of it like this: as a light being, as an astral being, they operated on what we might say as a 10 in energetic terms. But when they projected into an animal or plant life or anything that was manifested here on the planet's surface, they became dense and heavy, and they dropped to like a 2. So from this 2 energy, they couldn't do what they could do from a 10 energy. Makes sense, right? From a 2 energy, though, they didn't remember how to access their astral abilities and their astral knowledge. So many of them became trapped in whatever form they projected into. Now, this is where half animal, half man fables and tales come from. Centaurs and mermaids. This is how that happened. They transformed into these things. They couldn't quite get out. And so now there's this half horse, half man, or this half mermaid, half person being. Now, not all of these light beings chose to project themselves. Some chose to just gradually become denser and denser over time until they took on what we know as the human form, a physical body able to interact with this physical earth that they found themselves on. Now, again, remember that in this denser state, when they actually had a physically manifested humanoid type body back then, they still didn't remember how to access their astral powers and abilities. Now, lastly, there were some who chose not to transform at all. For the most part, they stayed in astral form or as light beings. As you can see on the screen, I found this picture and I love it because the ones way back in the background kind of remind me of the ones that decided to stay in astral form. So these light beings, the ones that decided not to transform, that decided to stay in astral form, but still decided to hang out around Earth and see what Earth was all about, they became what you might think of as etheric guides. Now, the humans, the ones that made themselves denser and took on humanoid form, these newly formed humans formed groups on the planet. And the groups all had their own etheric guides, those who decided to stay in their astral bodies to try to aid and guide those who had become human. Now, as guides for this newly formed human race, the messages and teachings that the guides were trying to convey to the humanoids was pretty much the same, no matter what group they were overseeing at the time. All of the guides planet-wide, their message was, we used to be all one, we separated, some of you forgot, and now you need to remember. That sounds kind of familiar. That's pretty much the same message that we share today in these spiritual groups, but also the messages that religions and ancient civilizations all share, that idea of once being one part of something and then separating, and the forgetting is the main point here. So these origin stories is what I will call them, are all to help us. The central theme is to help us to remember what we used to be. Okay, so what does all of this have to do with Lemuria? I am so glad you all asked. So from what I understand, the next part of the story goes like this. Those groups once started as just one large group in the area that we now call Lemuria. At some point, that original group, Lemuria, separated. Some of them went over to what we call Atlantis. And now there's a whole nother story about why they separated and what went down between the Atlanteans and the Lemurians. Fascinating, interesting story, a lot of different takes on it, but we're not going to get into that right now. What we're going to do is go back to the Lemurians and what happened with the ones that stayed in Lemuria. So again, we have these Lemurians who projected themselves into animal and plant life. We have the humanoid Lemurians and we have the etheric guide Lemurians. I also want to state that at this time in development, in Earth's development, there was no spoken language. And that fact is going to come in and it's going to be relevant a little bit later. So just stay with me. Okay. So we have these etheric guides and they're trying to communicate and tell the humanoids that they need to remember, right? No spoken language. But the humanoids had become so dense, so human, that they couldn't even understand what the guides and the etheric guides were trying to communicate, because the communication was different at this point. This is me interjecting into this story. I believe that the etheric guides communicated in a non-spoken form, energetic, possibly telepathic, possibly, but as these humanoids were so dense now, not dense dumb, but dense in their physical body, they couldn't understand how they used to communicate. So the guides had to dumb their messages down, like dumb it way, way, way down. So much so that they said, it's going to take us a billion years to get through to them, to the point to where they can even understand what we're trying to communicate or how we're trying to communicate. Now, I want to remind you again about the abilities that the Lemurians were known for. They were able to manifest things just by thought instantly. Like they would just be floating around thinking, I think I want to be a rock, and poof, they were a rock. So they also did the same thing with fish. You know, the half fish, the half man, whatever they wanted, they just thought about it and it instantly they were able to do it. They also had the ability to move objects using thought. It's believed that some of the great monuments of old were built by simply moving the large boulders and rocks and other things with the power of their minds. And they also had the ability, we've talked about this several times, to project themselves into other forms, but also to project energy. So there's a lot of the story that I'm just going to leave out for the sake of time. But let's just say at some point, these guides trying to communicate with these humanoids, at some point, one of the guides said, after a long time of trying to do this, ain't nobody got time for this shit. I'm not hanging around for a gabillion more years trying to communicate with these fools who got themselves stuck. And then another one said, yeah, can't we just ditch them and get out of here? And then another one said, yeah, let's bounce, but let's leave our message like on a post-it note or something, because one day they will understand our message, but we don't have to stick around and wait for that day. So before they left, they projected all that they knew into crystals. They buried these crystals strategically. Now it's said that these crystals were buried in a grid pattern across the entire surface of the earth. So all over the earth and beyond to even other stars and other dimensions. And that when the humanoids, and that they would be found by the humanoids when the humanoids were ready to understand the messages that were encapsulated or energetically held within the crystals. So in our time, you all know that we are now discovering and unearthing these crystals, and we're calling them Lemurian crystals. Now, remember, these crystals are not just a history lesson on the beginnings of all that is, a reminder, but of all that happened. It's not just a historical record, but it's also a reminder and an instruction manual, if you will, on the abilities that we used to have as etheric beings and how to use those powers and abilities, how to tap back into that. A reminder also of how we used to exist and communicate, and how our thoughts literally created things instantaneously, and how we used to project energy, how we used to project ourselves, instructions how to access not only the history, but also how to access all of those abilities and powers. Oh, quite a story, right? Now, I said I skipped some things. I want to add in a few things about Lemurians. They were a civilization that was primarily led by feminine energy. They were nurturing and very connected to nature. They were said to be the first humanoids, Lemurians were said to be the first humanoids to develop memories. So way back when, humans didn't even have memories. They had no need for them. It is also said that the Lemurians were the first to develop, after some time, the first to develop a spoken language, which initially sounded something like a hum or a song. Now, I know some of you are thinking after this wild tale I have just told, but Valorie, if they didn't have memory and they couldn't speak, then where do these stories come from? How do we know all of this that you just told us? Well, all of this knowledge, the knowledge of ancient civilizations, is stored in the Akashic records. And a lot of the details of this particular story and many other Lemurian stories that are out there are said to have come from people tapping into the Akashic records and then relaying those stories in modern times. So that's how we get stories before stories were a thing. It's also interesting to note that Lemurian crystals, which we will talk about later, but one of their metaphysical properties is also to help you access these Akashic records. All right, so all of this sounds like a very fantastical bedtime story, and that's as it was intended to sound that way. I hope you all enjoyed my little storytelling time. But Valorie, why would you ever believe that that story that you just told is the truth? Why would I ever believe that that story is the truth? Well, first of all, I believe what the fuck I want to believe. Let's just say that. But second of all, there are parts of this story that I do hold as truth, and parts of the story that I just put out there to let your imagination grab onto something and kind of ask your own questions. So which parts of the stories do I believe as true? The lost continent of Lemuria, also known as the lost continent of Mu. What I believe is that there was indeed a lost continent. I won't get into all the research supporting this, but I will briefly say that there are populations you can see on the map that surrounded where Mu used to be. And in those surrounding populations, like the Polynesians, South American natives, and some Chinese cultures, they all told very similar origin stories, like how their people came to be. They all had these very similar origin stories, and all of them had one commonality, that their ancestors used to live on an island and that that island sunk below the surface of the water. Now these outlying, I'm going to see if y'all can see my cursor. These outlying countries back in those times had no way to communicate with one another. It's not like somebody from here told a story and somebody over here heard it and repeated it. They had no way to communicate. These stories developed independently of each other and yet had the same commonality of once being an island that is no longer in existence that sunk. So with all of that and a lot of other supporting evidence that I just don't have time to get into now, I do fully believe that there was a lost continent of Lemuria that is no longer present in today's land. So that's one thing that I believe from the story that I just told you. Some people even say that the biblical tale of the flood was another reason why is what took out Lemuria. That's up to y'all. Y'all can figure out what portions of that y'all believe. But let's go with the lost continent because that is relevant to the actual story of the crystals, which we'll get into a little bit later. Let's see. As far as what actually happened on that continent, the etheric beings, did they really shapeshift and did they become, is that where mermaids come from? As far as what actually happened on that is still up for debate. And I will say, do your own research and figure out what part of that story sounded like it really resonated with you and what parts are just like, no, that's crazy. But do your own research. I love that tale because it was just so fantastical. I just love telling that tale. There are a lot of other tales of Lemuria, some that talk instead of, in the beginning, we were all one, some that talk of actual star seeds coming down and interstellars having a part. Find the story that resonates with you. So the story of the continent itself, I do believe is true. The story of what the people did is still up for debate. There are some commonalities, even if you listen to all the stories, if you listen to all of the stories that are out there about what these people did, there are still some very prevalent commonalities that kind of makes you wonder, even if the full story wasn't true, probably this part of it is true. I'm going to leave that up to your own explanation to figure out what is true for you about that story. But let's move on and start talking about the crystals. What about the whole story about these beings being able to put information into crystals? That sounds crazy, Valorie. People can't put information into crystals. Well, hold on, y'all. I'm gonna pull some science out on you. Scientists believe that they have built a quartz coin that can store 360 terabytes of data. This is enough for billions and that the quartz is of such a material that it will preserve it and last for billions of years, presenting the opportunity for the entire humankind history to be recorded and preserved, likely well after humans are extinct. Now, I don't think humans are going anywhere. That was a quote from Forbes.com. I didn't know that the entire humankind history could fit within 360 terabytes. I thought it would be a lot more than that, but regardless. Researchers at the University of Southampton's Optoelectronics Research Center have managed to actually do that. So before it was conjecture, they have actually done this. They are able to record and retrieve 5-dimensional digital data. I find that very interesting, that it's 5-dimensional digital data. There's a whole article on seeing what that means and how it's laid out and why it's 5-dimensional and not 3-dimensional. I'm gonna let y'all look at that on your own, but they do it using these quartz crystals. And with each disk, as previously mentioned, able to hold up to 360 terabytes of data. If you need to put that into real world terms, that's the equivalent of 22,500 basic iPhones, basic iPhones. You can see here on the image, that's the entirety of the Holy Bible King James Version stored on that small little coin disc. in quartz. So we have not only the belief that it can be done, but we have scientists who are able to store information on quartz. So of course, that's from futurism.com. So of course I believe that there's the ability to store information on quartz. And it took us all of these billions of years to figure out how to do that. I very much believe that it's been done for a long time because nature always does it before science catches up. So yes, I believe that information is stored in quartz crystals. So I put these blank sides in because that reminds me not to keep going. So y'all, it's okay. I got issues, I know. Okay. So let's see. I think that's it. That's all I wanted to cover for the story of Lemuria and the Lemurian crystals and what information they include and how that information got there, what pieces of the story I actually believe. I want to pause for just a moment here. Now, like I said, I know there are lots of stories out there on Lemuria and how it started. This is not a time to share individual stories. I love that you guys are already sharing that in chat, but I want to pause for just a moment and ask, does anyone have any questions over something that I specifically said or something that I rushed through that you didn't quite catch?
There doesn't seem to be any questions. There was a comment, John talked about the Marshallese that live in that map that you said, and they are a matriarchal society. And then that quartz is one of the elemental minerals, but there's no questions, at least not in chat.
Yay. Oh, that makes me feel good. That means I'm explaining stuff. I'm explaining it right. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the identification of Lemurian crystals. So how are we able to tell these crystals apart from all of the other crystals that are out there? Clear quartz crystal and Lemurian crystal and Lemurian quartz crystals have the exact same mineral composition. So what makes a Lemurian a Lemurian? Lemurian crystals, and I pulled this picture on purpose, Lemurian crystals are not exactly the beauty queens of the crystal world. In their raw, natural form, they look like heavily used crystals. And I think that adds to the charm and the mystery of the story of the crystal, because it lends to question, how you say that? Y'all know what I mean. Were they used for the Lemurians before they were buried? Is that why they look so heavily used? I love that. Now, I'm gonna put this in here because I don't think I put it anywhere else on the side, but it's also said, here's another rumor out there, is that when you find those heavily used crystals, some say that the crystal that you find that speaks to you, it speaks to you because you were the one that put it there. I kind of like that story too. But let's move on. Nope, let's go back. Oh, y'all, how did I skip all the way to the end? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about identifying them. And I think this is where I'm supposed to, yeah, I got to show y'all how OCD I am with this slide. Y'all see what that says? I didn't read it. It says, stop the slide share and go. I didn't stop. This is how I have to do my presentations. Okay. So we have these Lemurian crystals that are not the beauty queens. They look used. It's important to note because many commercially found and bought crystals don't look as used as that picture. They look very polished, high sheen on them. That is because they are polished. I have nothing against polished stones. I love polished stones. The reason why they polish them is because it makes their striations more visible. Striations. I bet a lot of y'all were going to say, oh, you can tell a Lemurian crystal because it has striations. But hold on, because a lot of crystals have striations. Kyanite has striations, pyrite has striations, tourmaline has striations. I think I'm gonna spotlight myself to make sure y'all can see this. See all the striations on tourmaline? So it's not just striations that make it a Lemurian. I want to point that out. It's not just striations that make it a Lemurian. And also remember how I said that crystal quartz and Lemurian are the exact same crystal composition. On a crystal, just a regular clear quartz crystal, let me say that correctly, you can also see very faint striations. So it's not just the striation that makes it a Lemurian crystal. And also, if you take a clear quartz crystal and you polish it up, those striations might be a little bit more visible. So how do I know this? Because somebody may have at some point got her Lemurians mixed in with her quartz crystals and panicked and had to reach out to Jillian. And I was just like, Jillian, I need help. And Jillian was the one that set me straight and gave me some reference materials on how to tell the difference between the two. So striations alone are not what's going to define a Lemurian crystal, but it is a good starting point. And as I showed you, the difference between a striation on a tourmaline or any other of the different crystals that I mentioned is because those striations on the tourmaline, kyanite, pyrite run perpendicular to the base of the stone. They run up and down. On a Lemurian crystal, they run back and forth. They run parallel to the base. So that's one thing you can look for, but that is not the deciding factor. Let's get on to the other things that make these crystals Lemurian. And I feel like I have lost my page or my slide. No, I didn't. It's out of place. I got it, y'all. Okay. So striations, we talked about that. I really don't know where my page went. It's okay. I'm gonna find it. Here it is. It's out of order. What the hell? Okay. So not just striations. The other thing that you can look at is alternating sides, and I'm not sure I have that on the slide. I think I'm going to show that to you in person. I am. Okay, so we have striations on one side in this crystal. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to see it. If I turn it to the light, can y'all see it? The striations on that side. And then if you turn it, you have a side that does not have striations. This one has what I call etching. Back to the side that's striated. And if we turn it the other direction, we have a side that again does not have noticeable striations. It's more clear with the etchings. So another way that you can tell that it is Lemurian is that it has alternating sides. One etched, I'm sorry, one with striations, one without striations. That's again, not the only defining thing, not the only defining factor, because some have striations on all sides. So we're going to keep going. But if you're looking at a crystal, those are some of the things that can, y'all know I'm talking to my dog right now. Those are some of the things that can tell you that it's a Lemurian quartz crystal, alternating sides. Another thing that can tell you is the shape. This, I think, is one of the most important things. Aside with finding the striations first, looking for alternating sides, which may or may not be there. This one is the next one that's really a clue into is it a Lemurian or not, and that is the and that is the shape. The shape of a lot of Lemurian crystals have a elongated face. And what I mean by that is this is the tip. We're not talking about the tip. The face would be the side. And this one is from why am I holding it upside down? From base to tip, that whole side is a face. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me switch over to one that's more easy to see the difference between a face. A face would be here, the side, and the point would be the top. In this case, you can barely see where the point is because it's almost all the face. So that's one thing that you can look for, is seeing that those very long faces are you can see it in other quartz, but you can almost always see it in a Lemurian quartz. Another thing that you can look for is the fact that you will have a fat side and then a skinny side, and then a big thick side and then a skinny side. So that's another way that you can tell as far as the shape. The alternating sides also vary in width, and that's pretty much across all of my Lemurian crystals. They have a big side and then a smaller side and then a bigger side and then a smaller side. So the shape is another way to look at it. They are usually not symmetrical. So you will not be able to look at a Lemurian crystal in most cases if you're looking at it from the top down and see that all the sides are symmetrical. Almost never happens. So they're not symmetrical. That's another clue that you might have a Lemurian crystal. Let's see. This is another example, a different crystal that has a really long, elongated face and then a really skinny side. And a really big one. Y'all see I got labels. I got numbers on them so I can keep track. And almost nothing up here at the point. And then another one, etching. I mentioned that a little bit earlier just because you could see it visibly on one of the crystals. Let's see, which one do I have for demonstration? This one is a good one. If I should get my, see if that makes it easier for you to see. It does. Nope, for a minute. The etching is, I can't, maybe it was better with my hand. I don't have good descriptors for etching, except that it's not striation. It almost looks like it wants to be a striation, but then it gets jagged and it goes off and it kind of looks like a little pocket. I'm gonna get it, y'all. I'm gonna get it on there. Y'all gonna see it in a minute, or maybe not. There, can you see how it's not a flat surface, but it's also not a striated surface. It's just got all these different etching. It's the best I can call it. Etching is another way. There are specific types and formations in the etchings that have different metaphysical properties, but seeing one side striated and another side with etching on it is another clue that you might have a Lemurian crystal. I think that is all I wanted to talk about as far as identifying if your crystal is Lemurian. I got kind of off because I'm not sure what happened to the order of my notes, but I do want to stop and see if you have any questions about identifying a Lemurian crystal.
I did get some private question about where to get them. And I mentioned that you were going to talk about that here in a minute. Yes,
absolutely. Okay. Yep. Perfect. Okay. So let's move on. I think I'm done with my notes. I think it's time to move back to screen sharing. Perfect. So we talked about identifying. Now we're going to talk about special characteristics found in Lemurian crystals. So you're pretty sure you got a Lemurian crystal. This part is different little things and cool shit is what I like to call it. The cool shit that you can find on your crystals. The first thing we're going to talk about is windows. Now, windows are the most classic form of a window, easily identified window is this diamond shape right here. It's called a window because it is a flat surface that does not reach all the way to the tip of the crystal. It's a flat surface on the side of the crystal that also is not the entire side. So windows are generally diamond in shape. However, if you see on the second one, based on the growth pattern of the crystal, sometimes that diamond shape gets elongated and you have an elongated parallelogram. So a window might be diamond in shape, or it also might be one of these elongated parallelograms. And here's one over here. You can see it on the far side, just kind of right there. And this one actually has two. It has one right there, and it has one diamond shaped right there at the top. I actually have a couple of crystals with the windows in them that I'm not sure you're going to be able to see on camera. I might try to show it to you a little bit later, but I do want to move on because I want to talk specifically about this elongated parallelogram window, which is a special type of window. So if you go down here to the base and assume that that parallelogram is sitting on the base and you pay attention to which way it's leaning, this one will be considered a time link window to the past because it's leaning backwards. There are also ones that are considered time links to the future because they would be leaning forward. I believe the one I have is the time link to the future. Windows in general, what makes them special in metaphysical terms is that they are considered literally windows into the crystal. So in a gemology term, the gemologists use these windows to literally see into the crystal and see the inside structure of the crystal. Take that same meaning and translate it into metaphysical terms. It's a way to look within. It's a way to look within and see what lies beneath. These are used for delving deeper into clairvoyance skills, used for scrying, seeing, psychic readings, and divination in general. And of course, if you have one that links to the past, it's helping you look back into the past and see some things that you might not be able to see. Same thing with the future, scrying and looking forward, fortune telling, as it were. So I really like the time links, mostly because I was able to find a couple in the crystals that I have, and that's super cool. I think windows is one thing. Another thing is channeling crystals. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult for me to describe, so just play along, people, play along. Let me stop the screen share. Put me back up here. This is a channeling crystal. What makes a channeling crystal most significantly is you see that big flat surface towards the tip, this one right here. It looks like a pentagram, but it's not. I'm about to tell you why in just a minute. This is a 7-sided face on this side, and directly opposite on the side that's facing me that you can't see is a tiny perfect triangle. It's called a 7-3 because the triangle has 3 sides. So a 7 side directly opposed by a triangle. And then if you turn it, it does the same thing on the other big faces. This big face is directly opposed by a tiny triangle. They're called 737 crystals or channeling crystals. If you look at it straight on, which you guys can't. Oh yeah, you can. Oh, look at that. I got it. Ah, I wasn't sure if I was going to get it. I hope y'all can see that. Only the 3 large sides come up to form the point. And you can kind of see it right here. That's one of the tiny triangles. And then there's a tiny triangle over here and a tiny triangle over there. These are called channeling crystals, and these are special, near and dear to my heart. I love them because I'm a channel. This one specifically is called a trans channel crystal. They are known to be connectors, connecting you to your higher self, the Akashic records, your intuition, and other dimensions. They're used for channeling, basically. So that's one thing that you can go through your crystals. Now, I want to stop and say this is not specific to Lemurian crystals. Clear quartz crystals can also have this formation, as well as other crystal type quartz like amethyst and citrine, but it's most seen in Lemurian and clear quartz, the 737 formation known as a channeling crystal. Love it. So I've got one of those. Tantric twins. This is another special formation that has metaphysical ramifications. This is called a tantric twin, which is different than crystal twinning. I'm not even going to get into crystal twinning. It was a whole bunch of mathematical complication shit that no. This is called a tantric twin, not a crystal twinning. Tantric twin just means they have the same base and 2 different crystals. You can see right there. This is a crystal and that's a crystal. They all have their own points and their own faceted sides and their own striations, but they're together They're called tantric twins, two terminations at the same end, that developed from the same base. They're also sometimes called soulmate crystals, and these crystals are said to assist with relationships and promote togetherness. So I've got that one as well. I think the further away I hold it, the better it looks. I like this one. Now I want to say that I'm pointing out the main features, but if you look closer at this one, this also has some things that you can see on it, like etching. I believe this one also has a key on it. We'll talk about keys a little bit later. So that's a tantric twin. Barnacles is the next thing I want to talk about, the next type of formation that you might see on a Lemurian quartz. Let's see if I can get it here. Can y'all see that little nubby? That's called a barnacle. That's a little tiny nubby, but I have one with bigger. There we go. Barnacles are attachments to the main crystal, and it is believed that the main crystal is the old soul, and the newer crystals are the newer souls that are coming in and attaching themselves to the older soul. These crystals can be used for like tapping into teacher leadership. It's like figuring out what's being attracted to you and why. That's what I like to think of these crystals for. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that, because I'm gonna get sidetracked, y'all. I'm gonna start talking all about the crystals I love. Y'all don't know how much time I've spent with my little baby crystals here. I love them all so much. Let's see if there was any other one. I did want to point out one more. Just one second, please. I did want to, I don't know if y'all can see on this one. I think you can see it if I put it on with the black behind it. Can y'all see how this one is slightly discolored? I think you can kind of see it. Not, I shouldn't say discolored because that makes it sound bad. It's slightly yellowish red in nature and not the clear like the other ones. I hope y'all can see that. It's got a slight coloration to it. And so I want to talk really briefly about the crystals that are not clear. There are Lemurian crystals that are currently being mined that are reddish in nature, and that's due to the iron, almost forgot, it's due to the iron deposits on and within the crystal. And it is said that those crystals, I wish I remembered where they're coming from. I want to say Cambodia, but that might not be entirely right. But those crystals, the ones that are called scarlet, that's the word. The ones that are called scarlet Lemurian crystals are said to have a special connection to the divine feminine, also considered to be used by the Lemurian high priestesses. And so they have a little bit of a extra oomph to their metaphysical properties. As far as where you can find crystals, oh yay, Shirley said hers has a rose-colored hue. Yes, cool. So I'll touch on this, and I'm ad-libbing this. This is straight from the hip, y'all. When Lemurian crystals were first discovered, they were discovered in Brazil, which is why some people are like, hold on, that's not nowhere near where y'all say Lemuria is, which I want to remind you, Lemurian crystals were planted earthwide on a grid pattern. So the first ones were found in Brazil. They were found by the Brazilians. I forget what happened, war shut down their mind or something. When they came into public awareness, though, was when Americans went back to Brazil and began mining these crystals, and that was in the 90s. So these crystals are relatively new to our current humankind, because they just started being labeled and coming into popular use in the 90s and being called Lemurian crystals. So Brazil is what you'll hear or see most people say that's where they come from. However, there are other mines that are now coming up. There's one in Arizona. From what I understand, the Lemurian crystals that come out of Arizona are the ones that have striations all the way around, that don't have the alternating sides. I also know that there's some in, I have not researched enough to be able to tell y'all the difference between the crystals that are being found in the different regions, other than what I'm telling you right now. It's where they're being found. In California, Mount Shasta, there's a whole story about Mount Shasta crystals as well, because some people say that some of the Lemurians retreated into the base of Mount Shasta Mountain and that they still live there to this day, and that they're actively pushing those crystals up to the surface. So I'm telling you, all kind of stories, death and breath. It's also said that these crystals generally, when found, when they're mined, when they're found, is that they're found face down, as if the Lemurians from above push them into the ground. They're not found in formations naturally occurring coming up out of the ground, which I found fascinating. And the gal that was explaining that, who's actually someone who's seen the mines, said that when she first heard that story, she pictured them being pushed into the sand and just like scattered all over the place. That's not exactly how they are. You actually would go into a mine, and within this mine, this cave or tavern, you would see like soft sand within the mine. And when you go to excavate the crystals, as you're pulling them out in the clusters that they naturally come in, you're pulling them out and you're pulling out the butt end, basically. You have to flip them over to see the top side of the crystal formations, which I think is super cool. And again, lends to the mystery of Lemurians, like why do they grow that way? And were they really pushed and seeded into the ground? So Brazil, California, Arizona, that I know of locally. There are other places. Russia has Lemurian crystals. The main thing is, no matter where you're getting these crystals from, as the story goes, and I do believe this in general, is that they are coming up at this time because they are useful to us at this time, and because we are ready as a people, as a civilization, to use them and to tap into their knowledge. In Colombia as well. Yes, Charity. I think that answers the question. Was there any further question about location that I didn't answer, or did you?
Nothing that I've gotten.
Cool. Just pausing. Okay. Good.
Well, we've got someone raising their hand. Would you rather they put it over in the chat?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
put it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we talked about a little bit about the metaphysical properties, just as it related to the special characterizations that I was pointing out. But let's talk about, I guess I talked really fast. I'm doing really good on time, y'all. I'm quite proud of myself.
We did just have a location question pop up. Do you want that, Val?
Yes.
Okay, so Joseph wants to know, is there any ideal place to use them as far as bringing them back to an Earth grid? Are you going to talk about use here coming up?
Ooh, I am going to talk about use, but that specific question I had not thought about, but just thinking about it in energetic terms, I would think that if you have a crystal, Lemurian crystal, because that's what we're talking about, but any crystal with you, as you go to these energetic power points in the Earth's grid, I would think that it would magnify and intensify its power in that moment, or maybe even charge it. However, we're going to talk about charging in a minute. So yeah, I would say yes, I would think that if you are aligned with the Earth's grid while you're using these crystals or any crystal, that they would magnify and intensify their powers.
Okay.
All right.
And I think Camille's still working on her question, so we'll get that next time.
Okay, sounds good. Back to the screen share. Okay, so we've got the crystals. We know a little bit about the different things that we might be looking for to identify. Oh, you know what I forgot to tell you? I'm gonna show this one real quick. Double terminated. I forgot to show that one. Let me stop it. Can y'all see it? I'm gonna stop it. Let's make me big. Double terminated. It's got a point on that end, and it's also got a point on that end. I'm just fascinated by this because neither end looks as if it was broken off. You know, sometimes you see crystals that have points and they look like it's just broken off and that's why it formed a point. It looks like it literally grew from the center, and it has very defined points on both ends. It's also got a super cool, this particular one has a super cool inclusion on that end that looks sparkly. Anyway, a double-ended crystal is said to help you with moving energy in both directions. So sending energy out and also receiving energy. All right, now I'm ready for the screen share. So working with these crystals. So you found your crystal, you found the special doodads and things and whiz bang bells and whistles that you like on your crystal. Now, how do you actually work with those crystals? Crystal one-on-one. We are not going to get into that today. I'm going to say that everything that you would do with a normal crystal applies. We're not going to go into detail with that. Anything you would do to prepare any spiritual tool is the same thing that you would do first as you work with these Lemurian crystals. And that involves not just preparing the tool, but involving yourself, preparing yourself as well. But in addition to those things, there are also specific ways to work with Lemurian crystals that we will talk about. Now, as opposed to a clear quartz crystal that you program, Lemurian quartz is a quartz that you activate. How do you activate it? Well, it's the striations. It's the striations, y'all. As you take one of these, let me find one that's got really pronounced striations. My number 12. I love number 12. I've got them all numbered, and you will see later why, but I love number 12. So as you take it, you would rub your thumb or your finger, if you don't have a thumb, up and down around the striations on the side of Lemurian quartz crystal. And what that does is that activates and downloads the Lemurian knowledge. I can't keep rubbing it for too long, y'all, it's powerful. The Lemurian knowledge to connect you to the Lemurian energy grid that we just talked about. You can think of it like you're reading Braille. Like you're not visually reading it, you're not hearing someone read it to you, but somehow you're getting that message just by rubbing your finger across it. Another way you can think of it is the micro vibrations that your finger makes as it bumps across each one of those striations. You can think of that as vibrational and frequency transmissions, like a needle on a record player. You know, the needle picks up on those little ridges and bumps in the record and gives you some kind of song or music. Same thing with you activating the crystal by using your finger on it, is those vibrations, those frequency transmissions are also sending energetic transmissions to you and messages to you. So you activate Lemurian crystals, you don't program them. Lemurian crystals, Lemurian quartz crystals help us maintain our connection to spirit, aiding in spiritual evolution. These are also described as high vibration master crystals or master healers. Master healers, I wanted to put that in there, not just listed as a master crystal, because these Lemurian crystals are very, very, very useful for anyone who is doing any type of metaphysical healing work. So all y'all healers out there, you might want a Lemurian crystal in your stash. Lemurian crystals foster a connection with the divine feminine. We talked about that because the civilization of Lemuria was thought to have been ruled by divine feminine. It also fosters connections with soul unity, again, reminding us that we're all one. Access to ancient Lemurian knowledge and wisdom, which is the part that I find most fascinating because I want to know what they knew as far as moving energy, working with energy, projecting themselves, instant manifestations. All of that knowledge is stored within the Lemurian crystal. It also helps people overcome spiritual isolation and sadness. Multiple gifts of empathic and intuitive consciousness are awakened. Lemurian crystals are said to, as you activate the crystal, they're also, I've seen some places say that it also activates you or activates your DNA. And Lemurian is regarded as a skilled healer. Again, if you are a healer, I highly suggest trying to find a Lemurian crystal and working with it and see if it resonates with you. That statement there came from mycrystals.com. What I intuitively know, what I know about these crystals, I have spent a lot of time with these. I have 12 labeled crystals on my desk right here, and I have spent a lot of time fondling and getting to know these crystals. Don't worry, if I send you one, it will be cleansed and cleaned. I'll take all my fingerprints off of it before I send it to you. But having spent so much time with these crystals, having done so much research for this thing, there are some things that I just intuitively know about these crystals that I'm going to share with you. If they resonate, fine. If they don't, okay. But they are definitely one of the most powerful crystals that I've worked with, one of the higher vibrations, energetic crystals. They absolutely aid in meditation. I love holding a Lemurian crystal when I'm meditating, specifically when I'm meditating with the intention of connecting with realms beyond our current realm. So maybe not when I'm meditating, trying to figure out what I should have for dinner, but when I'm meditating, trying to connect with the interstellars, yes. Even though there are specific crystals to the interstellar groups, this one to me, I can still get there with the Lemurian crystal. I can still connect with the interstellar. So I love it for that reason, personally. Does it contain information? Absolutely. There are crystals in this grouping of crystals. This one's my favorite. This one is my personal crystal. And this one, you would think, it's got that, when I first looked at this, I was just like, oh, I don't want that crystal. It's got a big old blob in the middle of it. But the more I researched these crystals and really looked at it, that inclusion it's not documented anywhere in the research. That inclusion has powerful meaning for me personally, because I can look at this and just get lost in it. And that is one of the most powerful things that I find in a crystal, when you can literally meditate just by gazing into the crystal. I find that very powerful. So this one is one of my favorites. This one also has very pronounced striations on the side. What I know about crystals and working with these crystals is this one absolutely gives me messages. Absolutely gives me messages. I absolutely tap into something other than what I know, something other than my guides, something other than the people I'm used to communicating with in the non-physical. And I'm getting knowledge that is just, I can describe it as beyond. So I will rub on this one for just a little while, because this one, I'm friends with this one. And it likes it when I touch it. But this one is my favorite. So I can tell you from my brief experience in working with Lemurian crystals, that there is indeed knowledge and information stored within the crystal, which all you have to do is set the intention that you're going to access it. You don't need some big crystal rites ceremony, animal sacrifice to be able to gain this knowledge. It's there and it's waiting. That's why these crystals are coming up at this time, so that we can work with them, so that we can access the knowledge. I think I was going to say something else, but I don't know what else I was going to say as far as what I intuitively know. So if it comes up later, it does. Let me go back to the screen share. One moment.
Valid question. While you're doing that, a question came up over, and we had someone answer it, but I'd love to hear your answer, just because I want to say this in your group. Does size matter?
Yep, it sure do. Don't let me ever tell you it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Yes. Let me see the question. Does the size of the crystal affect the ability to use them? Oh, absolutely. If I get a tiny sliver of only when speaking of crystals will I make this statement. A tiny one can still benefit you. Yes, if you get a tiny sliver of Lemurian crystal, can you still access this information and other properties? Absolutely, absolutely. I'm tapping in for that one because I want to get their answer on why the small crystals. From what I know, remember when we were talking about so this is the image they just gave me. Remember when we were talking about those coins and how the entirety of the human civilization, everything that we know could be stored on that tiny little thin sliver of a coin? It's the same thing with the Lemurian crystals. You are not going to miss out. Only y'all, I can barely get these words out. Only when talking about crystals, only when talking about, you are not going to miss out if you have a small crystal as opposed to a large crystal. The information is still there. And if that crystal speaks to you, then whatever was specifically encoded in that crystal is the message that was meant for you. So personally, I prefer the big crystals, but that's because of what I like to use them for. I like to have something substantial when I meditate to hold on to. Now, I also have a Lemurian crystal necklace that was gifted me. So absolutely, you can use those. Gifted to me. I'm skipping words and everything. You can use those smaller pieces as jewelry. I've seen them even as small enough to be as earrings. And maybe you're just one of those people who likes to play with her earrings or play with his earring, and you can just get the information that way. But yes, the size is not relevant to the information stored within it. You will still get what you need out of the crystal, dependent on the size. Only when dealing with crystals. Okay, do we have any questions other than that?
Did is the knowledge in the crystal different from crystal to crystal?
I would say intuitively, yes. I got a strong yes as soon as you asked that question out loud. I would say yes. I would say there's basic knowledge, which is just, hey, this is who we used to be, and this is what we used to do. But there's also specific knowledge to, I'm getting an affirmative. So for instance, if you are interested in learning how to move rocks with your mind, like the ancients did, that information across all of these crystals that I have spread out with me, there might be a general statement, hey, yo, we used to move rocks with our minds. Like that information is in all the crystals. But you might find a crystal that speaks to you that is going to specifically outline how that was done, which you will be able to access through activating the crystal and connecting with the crystal. That's what I believe, is that the information is yes, it's across all the crystals, but there's certain crystals that it's like certain books go into deeper explanations as to what's going on. So you might find a crystal that has a deeper explanation into whatever it is that you're seeking, which is why we have channeler crystals and double terminated end crystals and twin crystals, because they all have specific messages to what it is you're seeking. I hope that answered that question.
Okay, and then someone's asking about finding the crystals, but you're going to talk about that here in a minute. And then someone said you were going to talk about what a key is.
Oh, a key. I was going to talk about that. Who said that? Because I don't know if I said that out loud. Somebody is calling me on my game, because I've been mentioning keys for like weeks now.
You said.
Did I say it? Damn it. I need to watch what I'm saying. This one, I believe, is what I consider a key. Let me see if I can get it on camera. Y'all are going to see it in a minute, because I'm going to stick my finger in it. See right there? It's an indentation into the surface of the crystal. Now, from what I understand, there are people who say that keys have to be a specific shape. And this one, if you look at it, you can kind of see that shape, and the shape is a hexagon. You can kind of see that shape in this one, but I don't believe, personal belief, I'm not a gemologist, that all keys have to be a specific shape. I think you will know when you're looking at a key. A key is an indentation into the surface of the crystal. Said to unlock, it's a key, said to unlock deeper truths. So yes, I hope that answers your question. Oh, suggested elements you recommend to pair with the tiny ones. Quartz, clear quartz crystal. Clear quartz crystal, because it's a companion to almost every crystal and it's an amplifier. But I would say work with the Lemurian crystal first, on its own because it is considered a high vibration powerhouse all by itself, and then see if you want to pair it with something else.
Okay, and then is there anything special about a Lemurian crystal whose point is not just a point, but rather forms a line? I don't know if I know exactly what that means.
I think I know what you mean. Kind of like if you had a flat top and there was a line across the top, because I think I've seen that in some of the pictures I looked at. I did not come.
An example.
I can't see Jen.
It's Misha is showing an example right now.
Jen's got one, and Misha's. Hold on, Misha. Let me pin you so I can see it. Keep holding it. That forms a line. Unmute yourself, Misha.
Yep, she unmuted and you unmuted at the same time. Unmute yourself one more time, Misha.
There we go. So
There we go.
it doesn't just
Hold it.
come to a straight point. The
Hold it
points,
up.
so it doesn't just come to a point. The points form, oops, sorry, the point, seriously, where am I? Maybe if I put it into the camera, the points actually come together to form a line.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So,
that all comes, you see what I'm saying, how
Yep.
it goes? Okay.
so is there any significance to that? I have a crystal somewhere that does that same thing in a very smaller form. I don't know. Oh, I just found a window in one of mine. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's just part of the crystal formation. I don't think there's any significance to the flat point. I think there may be significance to, okay, so this is gonna sound mathematically challenging because I'm already trying to figure out how to say it in my head. When you count the faces of the sides of the faces, which maybe I should have talked about that just a little bit more. I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to do a screen share. Mhm. Are we sharing? I think we're sharing. Let me go back to a good picture of a crystal. Oh, there we go. Okay. If you were counting the sides of the face of a crystal, remember way back when I was trying to explain a 737 crystal? This is what I'm counting. I hope y'all can see my cursor. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Each side of the faceted top is what I was counting to get to 7. So whereas if this had come all the way to a perfect point, look, there's one that forms a line at the top too, Misha. If this had come all the way to a perfect point, then I would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But by the fact that it was straight across the top, that gives me an additional side to count. So I think the only significance in that formation is that it's adding to the number of sides, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's any significance to the fact that it doesn't come to an actual point, because a lot of the crystals, if you look really close, almost none of the crystals come to an actual point if it's a Lemurian crystal, which again goes back to when I was saying that they're very non-symmetrical in general. So I hope that answers your question, Misha. Any other questions in the chat, Ari?
I think we've covered them at this point. I'll go back through while you're going on.
Perfect. Okay. Let me check where I'm at on time. Doing good. I'm doing good, y'all. I talk fast. Where to buy Lemurian crystals? Well, where do you think? From me, of course. goddesswithanattitude.com. So I do have many of the crystals that I have displayed here and shown you. I am slowly getting posted on my website. I encourage you to go to the shop page, which I'm going to put in chat, and search by you know what, before I put that in there, I have another link that I was supposed to share and I didn't. As far as the characteristics and identifying different things on your crystal, like barnacles, all of the other things I mentioned that I'm not going to repeat, this is an excellent site for where is my stuff? This is an excellent site for digging a little bit deeper into that. It's one of the sites I used. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Ari. Ari is on it. Thank you, Ari. Ari just posted a link for where you can find the crystals that I have posted so far. So let me get back to, in that link, it's the link that you can find some additional information. Let me go back to my screen share. Because I was gonna say something else. Oh yeah, as I was getting ready to say the different characteristics, I almost named a characteristic that I don't think I showed y'all. So I was just like, oh, let me go back and show that. I know I feel like I'm all over the place, but this one is a really cool one, so I'm gonna do it anyway as soon as I find it. It's called a dolphin or dolphining. Which crystal is it on? It's on a couple of them. Let me find the one where it's really pronounced, because that also has a really cool meaning that I want to. I had it. Then I want to point out. Maybe I'm not going to point out. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Can y'all see where it looks like there's a tiny crystal right here?
I think you need to stop your screen share.
Sitting on top of the other one. And it's like, I don't know why they call it dolphin. I guess for whoever first named it, they considered it that it looked like a baby dolphin sitting on top of the mama dolphin. But that's also significant. I just thought I would point that out because this dolphin also happens with a barnacle on the one that was double pointed. So there's so many things going on with that crystal. That one is already posted on the website. Let me get back. Squirrel, I told you I'm gonna try to pack it in, but there's just so many good things about these crystals. I'm just so excited to share about you. I wish I could go through each and every one, but I don't have time. So if you decide to go through goddesswithanattitude.com to purchase your Lemurian crystals, what do you get? Well, you get, of course, the crystal. There's a really bit, so that is the one that I took, and you can see a really good picture, a really good view of that dolphin sitting on that one. That's the same one I just showed you. I should have just went to the next screen. Now I could have seen what I was talking about. You will also get a personalized note from me pointing out your crystal's unique properties. So if you were to purchase this one, you will get a note where I would remind you that it's double terminated, double terminated, what that means. I talked to you about what the dolphin means. I talked to you about what the barnacles mean. This one also has etching. I talked to you about what the etching means. So you get a little note pointing out everything that's unique about your crystal. And I also include special little goodies in there, which are going to be surprises for you all. Some swag from Goddess with an Attitude and Tarot Unicorns and Coffee. So if you decide to purchase there, I've given you the link. I hope you decide to purchase with me. I do think that takes me to the end of my slides. Thank goodness, the back and forth with the slides, y'all. Woo, I did it though. Any questions? I do want to mention, I'll do questions in just a minute. I do want to mention on the crystals, there are crystals like that one that, I just love this crystal. I'm gonna have to have a whole grieving process when this one gets shipped off to its new home. But this one is one that I highly recommend. It just feels so powerful, and there's just so many cool things about it. That's why I keep picking this one up. This one is listed on the website as number 1. You'll see 1 in parentheses. The descriptions are not entirely fleshed out yet because I just posted them. If you have questions about a crystal that you see, please question me. Please send me an email asking me about the specific crystal. But aside from the ones that are individually listed, there you will also see a listing that says Lemurian crystal intuitively picked or intuitively chosen. And what that is I take a moment to sit with you, not live, but to sit with your energy, to ask your guides, to ask any other presences, Lemurians themselves, if they choose to come through, to let me know which crystal is right for you for my large selection, fairly large selection of Lemurian crystals. And then you get that one that is chosen for you, kind of like it's the one that's got the big question mark on it, that is intuitively chosen for you. So intuitively chosen to work with you on whatever you're putting out there to the universe that you want to work on. So back to that question about, do different crystals have different messages? Yes, they do. And choosing that selection on my website, you will get one that is intuitively chosen for you, along with the swag and the personalized note telling you about your crystal. Oh, so that's what I have for you, you guys. Do we have any questions? I feel like I talk fast, but I feel like I really, really talk fast this time. So I want to make sure I give a couple of minutes at the end for anyone who needs, I'm just looking at the questions. Do we have questions in the?
I'm not seeing any over in the chat. I think Camille has her hand up again. Are you ready to take live questions?
Yep, go for it, Camille.
What a wonderful presentation. And I signed on a wee bit late. So I missed a good portion. And just from what I did get, profound. So I'm asking, is there any way that it was recorded, that I think I read that somewhere, that you can go back and view your PowerPoints?
Yes,
at
ma'am.
least, or the recording?
Yes, yes. It is recorded, and this will be posted within a day or two. It usually takes me a day, on my YouTube channel, which I'm also putting that link in the chat. Unless Harry beat me to it. No, look, I beat her. No, I'm kidding. It's not a race. That's the wrong fucking link. So there you go. It will be posted on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to get the correct link for you. There you go. Within a day or two. So either later on today or tomorrow, you will be able to find the full recording of this event. Do we have any other questions on the crystals? This was fun, y'all. This was so fun, sitting and working with these crystals. And there's so much that I did not get to share. And I really, really hope that above all else, I inspired you, intrigued you, and that you're going to go off and do your own research about Lemurian crystals and find out more about these amazing crystals, but not just the crystals themselves, more about the power and the information they store and how they can aid you on your spiritual journey. So, yay. Anything else? Did we get it?
Colleen's asking for a part 2 in advance.
Do a part 2 advanced.
How do you use crystals to increase energy when you're tired?
Oh, I would say that's a good question. I would have to say that it would be the one that's got the points on the end, because that's about sending and receiving. And so you could sit with the intention of receiving, but you can also have a crystal that only has the one point and pointed at you, and sent with the intention, asking your guides, asking Spirit Divine to give you more energy or to boost your energy. Have that crystal pointed at you is what I found that I do with just normal crystals, not specifically Lemurian, but with any crystal with the point. When I want to receive something, a download, a message or something, I'll point the crystal at me, usually during meditation. So that's one way that you can receive or get a boost of energy.
Awesome. All right.
Oh,
I think that's all we've got.
Yay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this event. This has been such a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. I love the turnout. Again, if you go to the website and you have a question about a specific crystal, please send me an email. Goddess, do I have it typed out so I can put it in chat? No, I don't. goddesswithanAttitudekc@gmail.com. That's how you can reach me. You can also go to the website and message me through the website. So thank you all so much. I hope you use these crystals to aid you on your spiritual journey. And I hope you've learned something that's learned something new today that's piqued your interest. Thanks, everyone.